Alrighty guys, welcome back to yet another video. This is Devoted for Christ. I'm Dylan Swist. I go by Minister Swist over at the 39 Beach Street Homeless Shelter. We give to the needy. We particularly mothers and children usually. So if you need like gas, clothes, whatever, please email me at legendaryclan1000@gmail.com. We'll talk and we'll see what you need and see if it's feasible for me to get you what you need. However, today we come with another video. It's called The Missing Piece. I'm sorry it was not uploaded yesterday. I came across some spiritual attacks. I got tongue-tied, went to bed, and today when I woke up I had some better points and some better scripture in order to use for this video. So let's get the video over with. Alrighty, so the first thing that I want to look at is John 18:10-11. It says, "Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. So Jesus said to Peter, 'Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given to me?'" The reason that I wanted to look at this verse in particular to start is we're talking about Peter today. Peter was multiple times mentioned in the Bible as being reprimanded by Christ for doing something he wasn't supposed to, called out for denying him 3 times. But in this case, he just didn't understand Christ, right? He didn't understand the piece that Christ was trying to put into place. The reason that this is important is we're looking for that missing piece. We're looking for where Peter went wrong. For example, Peter walked on water with Jesus, and as soon as he thought that he had it in himself to keep walking, his eyes came off of God and he began to sink. So we're looking at Peter today and how Peter just simply didn't understand multiple times the piece that God was trying to play or put into place. The reason that this is important is as Christians, we should really have that alignment so our goals, our dreams, our inspirations, the things that we want to be in life match God's, and so that the pieces match together. In our analogy today, we see a child. He's building a puzzle, right? And he wants to finish it. He's looking through the box, looking for pieces. And inevitably, the child gets angry. And that's kind of what we're looking at today. That's the analogy that we're going to use for this video, the missing piece. So let's continue here. So the first thing that I want to look at here is we are not the child of the analogy. The child equals God, but what are we? Well, we are the puzzle that's being worked on. In Philippians 1:6, it says, "And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ." That is God looking through the puzzle box, looking to lay down pieces of the puzzle and to see beauty come out of that area that he places the piece into. One thing that I wanted to read today is John 15:5. It states this in the ESV version. It says this. It says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, it is he that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." I love the part where he mentions it as a vine. Now, if you know anything about growing fruit or vegetables, you understand that the vine is very important. The vine connects to the source, and the source connects to the fruit or whatever you're trying to grow. It provides oxygen, it provides air, it provides all this other stuff and nutrients for that fruit or vegetable to continue growing and to remain attached to the vine. As soon as that plant or that vegetable decides to come off of that vine, we see it die. In this case, we are very similar in our faith. If our faith is not reliant on Christ and we are not looking for the piece that God is putting down, we look really goofy. Here's a point I'm going to make out to you today, is that people normally make a puzzle to see the finished result. And it's important that God knew us before we were even made, meaning he understood what we were supposed to be even before we were born. That being stated, it's important to understand that God has intentions to pick up puzzle pieces and place them where he will. We as people, our job is to be looking for what piece God is tugging at and trying to put into place, and then to make it fit into place. Yet so many times we want to put something else down, or we want to go our own way. We don't know how the pieces fit together. In the end, if we had our way, I truly believe that our puzzle would look mangled. It would look like it had pieces cut off to get together. We all knew kids who did that, where they cut off the edges, they cut off everything in order to make it fit. and then the picture's ruined. The picture looks absolutely goofy. Nobody wants to look at a puzzle that doesn't have its pieces into place perfectly. It's important to remember that a puzzle makes a masterpiece when it's completed the right way, but it takes time. In order to find the piece that you're missing, you have to go through the box. You have to confront God. We have to turn to God more. Something that I realized is that when Christians tend to struggle, right, and we tend to hit a hardship, we often think about ourselves first. Like, what can I do inside of my power in order to get through this? I see it kind of like this. They say if life is an ocean, and we're going to go with that, then it seems to me that in most situations, if trouble is the waves, right, as we went over in previous videos, that people would rather try and dive through it first instead of going over the wave. The problem with trying to dive through a wave, and if you've ever tried it, you know that this is true, if you don't go deep enough, you tend to be drawn backwards to a previous state that you were in. In other words, in Christian, health and ministry wise, you end up going back to old sins and old patterns that we're not supposed to have anymore. We start having suffocation, we start having these doubts, and we start being separated from God because we aren't relying on Him. He is the vine, we are the branches. He supplies our everything, and that's so important to understand today. And that's what I'm getting at. One thing that I wanted to point out, right, is that the child, he's making the puzzle, but he gets frustrated. God works the same way with us in our faith. If we are not fitting into place the way that we are supposed to, the Creator could get frustrated and really, upset that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. In this case, our puzzle is our walk with God. Our puzzle is His masterpiece. We are supposed to be allowing Him into our life to realign the pieces that is left. Sometimes I picture it like this. As a person told me that God sometimes will break a person in order to remake them. Sometimes, the piece that we think God's working on is really just ourselves saying, this is what I want instead of what God's doing. Right. Sometimes we confuse what a want and a need is. Sometimes we want God to take certain pieces and put them into place, but it's not the right time. Sometimes I've seen Christians get frustrated when they pray for very personal things and God says no. I said, that was very personal. I said, prayer is supposed to be glorifying to God. Prayer is supposed to be you praying for that puzzle piece to be picked up and put into place, for you and God to be on the same page. Sometimes in our life we hit various struggles and trials, and we think that it's okay to indwell into our own self and to think that we have the answer. Sometimes this comes across as pride. With Peter, when God told Peter that he was going to be crucified, Peter's immediate response was, no, I won't let them. And what did Jesus say to him? He said, go away from me, Satan. He said, get behind me, Satan. This is so important to understand. We don't always have the answer, and we're not always going to understand what's going on. But the reason that I'm making this video for you today is to tell you that it's okay to turn to Jesus first. It's okay to grip the vine. I remember once when I saw a woman growing some fruit, this particular fruit that I was watching had a very adverse reaction. It did not want to come off the vine. Like, this thing, instead of falling off and dying, the thing it grew deeper onto the vine. Like, it was gripping the vine, it was growing, it was sucking more oxygen out of that vine. We are supposed to be that abnormal piece of fruit. When the world doesn't like us, when the world rejects us, and there's nothing really left for us here, we got to turn closer to that vine. As Acts 17 says, God is our creator. He's the one that gave us life. So why wouldn't we turn closer to that vine, grip that vine closer? That should be our first response, right? One of the things I like about children when they're done a puzzle is they'll sit back and they'll look at it for the beauty that was found inside that completion. Sometimes it's looking and seeing which piece would be easier to find. Which piece is going to fit easier at this moment in time? Sometimes we need to take a step back from ourselves and remember that we have options. We have pieces that can be played. In this case, we have the one working on the puzzle. We need to take a step back and see what he's trying to do. That's all I had to say for today. I hope that this helps, to remember that Jesus is the one we're supposed to be turning to in order to get more pieces into place. Thank you and have a great night.